right, welcome to the week. Let's see, which week are we on here? We're going for the week of July 2nd to July 8th. These are my picks for the top 20 stories. There are a lot of relevant stories out there right now, but I've pared it down to 20, so we'll go through these in about 15 minutes. First one, this is by way of blacklisted news here. Police in California are using new surveillance tools to determine your threat score. And again, I'll put a list of all these links on YouTube below the video, and if I put it on my website, I'll post them there too. Anyway, California are using tools that basically go through and search your social media, and once they identify a suspect, and then it'll return and give the police a threat score for you. There's rumors that the NSA has similar technology, probably other government agencies that do the same thing. Essentially, there's a Facebook of everybody assigned with a threat score. I can't confirm that, but I can confirm via blacklisted news here that it is happening, at least on a police level. All right, let's move on to the next one. This story is also from blacklisted news. They do a pretty good job of finding things. Via Zero Hedge, another great source. I can't follow Zero Hedge directly because there's just so many articles that they post, but I rely on other people like Blacklisted and others to kind of skim the cream of the crop, and then I take that cream and give it to you. But basically, Illinois has a huge pension problem, and they're not the only ones. Here's a bunch of states where pension problems are huge drains, and it's a problem. I don't know what the answer is, but expect more pension issues, funding issues for municipalities and states as well as the federal government as we go along. All right, our third link comes from Public Intelligence, and it's the Defense Intelligence Agency's Russia Military Power Report. It's a little scholarly, but you can download it and you can assess what the United States believes Russia can bring to the table militarily. And there's a summary here with some various statistics. Good read if you're into comparative military advantages and stuff like that. Story number 4 comes from Now the End Begins, a Christian website that's got a end times type focus, and they find some interesting things. This is on how crisis management firms in Washington, D.C. do all the dirty work to keep the powerful in power. Again, it's just chronicling another aspect of corruption in D.C., how these professional firms are hired to handle events, and it's a good read if you want to get into it. So check that out as well. And it's kind of important to understand how Washington, D.C. works. And other related topics are nudge squads and the merging between corporate and government intelligence and on and on. It's essentially another breadcrumb to show how, we're managed, how there's groups, companies that are there to specifically handle things, how they bring scientific ways of manipulating public opinion and PR to get the rich and powerful out of jams. So it's definitely relevant. This story originates from the Telegraph via InfoWars. Fish becoming transgender from contraceptive pill chemicals being flushed down household drains. And this to me is a real big example of ecological problems that are being largely ignored. There's a video here attached. How everyone's so focused on carbon emissions, things like drugs and pharmaceuticals getting into the water supply, animals eating plastics that are dumped in the ocean, or having microplastics basically get into the entire ecosystems. You have microplastic molecules in you. And this is just another story, and how all the various drugs that we use, if it's affecting fish this way, what is it really doing to human beings? And again, we get to double ingest it. We have people that take the drugs for various medical issues, and then they pee it out, and eventually it goes into the ecosystem and gets into all that, starts affecting all the animal life, which we in turn eat, so we digest it again. It's just the long-term consequences of things I don't think enough attention is being paid to that, so check that one out. That's story number 5 on my top 20. Story number 6 comes again from Now the End Begins. Shadow government president Obama held secret meetings with the South Korean president to discuss Trump. Basically, it's really interesting how Obama refuses to give up the international limelight and is kind of, as I would agree with Now the End Begins, trying to insert himself as a sort of shadow president. He was recently at the G20 meeting. He's here meeting with the president of South Korea, either before or after a meeting with Trump, probably saying, oh, ignore him, we're going to get rid of him soon, and blah, blah, blah. I've never seen this before. I mean, I'm not that old, but from all the time of watching government, I've never seen a former president acting to essentially unravel what the current administration is up to, and it's kind of despicable. All right, story number 7 comes from Blacklisted News as well. Germany passes Orwellian anti-free speech Facebook law. It actually is sourced from Zero Hedge. And here we go. We can't acknowledge that maybe we've made some mistakes on our immigration policy. So we'll just put a muzzle on anyone who criticizes the government or the various Islamic immigrants that are coming into the country. And there was another article, I don't have it here, but there was some old lady who put something up on Facebook in Germany, and she basically got arrested. Plus, it's interesting that an American company, Facebook, has to comply with various countries as far as turning over data and policing according to local laws, which I find interesting. But this isn't just another attempt to muzzle free speech, cover mistakes, and it's all bad. Story 8 comes from Jihad Watch, Canada, to apologize and give close to $11,000 to Muslim who murdered U.S. soldier. This is totally despicable, and I think much more of a stink should be given about this. For one thing, if you kill a U.S. soldier, I'm not really sure you should be walking on this earth still. And then to get apologized by a supposed ally for keeping someone who murdered a U.S. soldier under oppressive circumstances and giving them, what is it? Oh, excuse me, close to 10.5 million, not thousand. My bad. But it's despicable, and it shows just left-wing lunacy reigning in Canada. Trudeau, I don't know what Canada was thinking. It's just like they elected some kind of little Ken doll who's just a prop for the globalist, and these are the type of policies you get, I guess. Story number 9 comes from Daily Mail, also all sorts of other stories. It was kind of a big story during this week, where North Korea successfully tests its first intercontinental ballistic missile capable of hitting Alaska. So this kicks off more of the war rumors. Now, I will spend a little bit of time here on, something came up, on what I think about North Korea and going to war with them. I think that I don't know what the answer is to them. I don't know how big of a threat they really are. I know they're a huge threat to South Korea. And it looks like they're developing ballistic missiles that can reach the U.S., so that is a threat, especially when you factor in EMP-type weapons and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of war hawks out there that are like, yeah, we should just hit them, that think that we can go in and kind of do like a bomb and out type of thing. I do not think that's possible. The North Koreans are not the Middle East. The Middle East, basically, you fight them with superior force. They run, they lurk in the shadows, and then they try to pick you off after you've supposedly pacified the area and wage an insurgency. The North Koreans fight, and there's proof of that, how tenaciously they fought in the 50s against us. And I don't think that we can just go in and decapitate their leadership, take out their command and control, maybe wipe out most of the artillery that's aimed at Seoul, and then hope that internal forces, once Kim is gone, will, somehow coalesce into some kind of government that's more willing to get rid of their nuclear weapons program. I think that's a fantasy. I do not see that as happening. I see us hitting them and a greater war coming out that could possibly draw in. I mean, you definitely have Chinese coming in to stop immigration into their country from North Korean refugees and to help pacify parts of North Korea. And there's also Russian forces near the area which could become involved. And I mean, there could be serious U.S. casualties and South Korean military and civilian casualties. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do fear, it might come to having to strike North Korea, but I worry about uh, Warhawks thinking it's just going to be this simple thing. I just don't see that as happening. All right, story number 10 comes from Breitbart. I know people have a problem with Breitbart because it's too conservative. I don't follow them regularly anymore, but I do check them, and I managed to find this story. Report: Jared, Ivanka, Conway, Dina Powell spotted at Hamptons party with Soros, Schumer, fake news journalist. That does not give me a warm fuzzy. I really like Trump. I support Trump. At worst, at least he's telling me a new brand of lies that at least give me some kind of comfort. Where if Hillary was in there, her lies are just, they don't even do anything for me. So at least I have someone who's politely lying to me now instead of someone who's just totally against everything I stand for. And I think Trump actually isn't lying. I think that he actually is trying to change the country for the better. I think he really believes in Make America Great Again. A lot of his points I'm right on board with. But, here's the big but, these type of things I don't like. I did not vote for Jared. I did not vote for Ivanka. I did not vote for, really, Pence. I mean, there's stories now where Pence is kind of hedging his bets, possibly. I would keep an eye on Pence. But I guess, there are the powers that be. This guy probably should be in prison or worse, but he's not. Probably because the CIA uses him and his non-government organizations for all sorts of ops. So he's a power that be, and I guess if you're navigating the plurality of a republic, you have to kind of deal with all the powers that be. So this is maybe Trump's way of sending Jared and Ivanka in to backdoor channel. But just this whole group, this whole Hamptons group here, the rich and famous that go up there, I think our society would be better off if most of them were not rich and famous and had power over us and were removed. And I'm not saying killed them or whatever, but I'm saying their power taken away. And the fact that we have, people from the Trump administration hanging out with them bothers me. All right, story 11 comes from In Serbia News, actually. And I monitor a couple of foreign news services, and here's one of them. Pentagon CIA rewrite Hollywood movies to save reputation. Goes on to talk about how, I believe, something like 1,800 movies have been influenced by the Pentagon and the Central Intelligence Agency. Note, I'm not anti-military, but I do think it's a little scary that they're so in bed with Hollywood and making sure that Hollywood portrays everything a certain way. Otherwise, they don't get cooperation from the military to lease military hardware and stuff. I mean, this is just one article of many. I thought it was a good primer to kick off your own research. Another great research topic is look up Operation Mockingbird, and you'll find out that basically it's CIA and military people working directly in newsrooms to influence how reporting happens. This went on, I think, in the 50s or 60s, but it's actually still ongoing. You look at Anderson Cooper, and he did a, quote, internship at the CIA. But I'll let you rabbit trail into that. Here's a good starting point for you. All right, story 12 comes from God Reports. Serious allegations of Google alters search engines to punish pro-life group. And this is not by any means limited to pro-life groups. Basically, the ones that control the information controls society, or so the idea is. So we see Twitter shadow banning people. What shadow banning means is basically, you can still tweet and stuff. They just tweak everything so no one sees your tweets or doesn't see them as much. Or YouTube delisting things because someone, random anonymous person, uh, attacked you and or made a claim that your video was racist or something like that, and basically right now they just take it down, and you have a three-strike policy. You get three complaints, and you can appeal it, but they're not really listening. And there's a total double standard, where people can make death threats against Trump on Twitter and not have their account suspended or anything. And then you have conservatives on there making basically some left-wing figure look bad, and then all of a sudden their accounts locked out for a couple days, or they notice the amount of impressions on their tweets drastically drops. And it's an acknowledged thing. If you want to search, search shadow banning. Anyway, this is just another indication that this stuff is going on. Facebook does this. Twitter does this, other social media outlets do this, and it's getting into the search engine stuff now. It's a real bad thing that Google is essentially a monopoly on search results. I hope that changes. One of the things that kind of sucks is there's no real barrier to entry. So other people could do it, but Google, at least for now, has a complete wrap on search engine results. And I think even like Yahoo search is just really a front end for Google. So if they get kind of freaky, and here's proof that they are, they can control what people see and hear. A Pew study talked about how something like 50% of Americans now, especially, and that percentage gets larger the closer or the younger you go, get their news from social media. So if you have Facebook and other groups tweaking what shows up on the news to favor one political point of view or another, the effects of that on society can be dramatic. So something to watch and something to fight against. All right, story 13, 8 to go. We have WorldNet Daily. I don't monitor WorldNet Daily, but this was actually picked up by Discerning the Times blog. 41 states revolt against Trump's voter fraud probe. Some of them are using the excuse that there's not a guarantee that if they give the data over to Trump's whatever committee that's looking into voter fraud, that there could be some hacking that goes on, and all the data would be leaked out to hackers and would be compromised. Thus, for security reasons, they can't do it. These same states routinely sell voter information to special interest groups, to the big parties, etc., which have proven to be not very hacker-proof. So in my opinion, that's just stalling. And then some states are just out and out refusing to do it. Some states are saying it's illegal to do it. But I guess this actual panel is not necessarily a federal government entity. But it's interesting to me because we are seeing more and more evidence of rampant voter fraud. And here Trump's making a stab at trying to clean it up. And of course, the swamp tries to not allow that to happen. So you need to get on this. You need to force your legislatures to, I'm not necessarily saying maybe Trump's commission's the best solution, but voter fraud is huge, and it's basically destroying the covenant kind of between government and people, where one person, one vote. If basically people lose faith in that, the whole foundation of our government really gets fragile. And I lost faith in it a long time ago. And with the dead voting and people voting multiple times and illegal immigrants voting, and it's just, there needs to be cleanup here, and this is just more evidence of that. All right, the next article, what is it? 14 comes from real clear defense. Chinese submarines could soon be quieter than the U.S. ones. The United States military has enjoyed a technological superiority for the most part since the end of World War II. And I think we're going to start being challenged here. And everyone's focusing on the Russians, but I think the real challenge is going to come from China. This is just one article of several I saw. The Chinese just recently came out with a new destroyer that's 10,000 tons that has 100 vertical launch missile tubes and advanced sensors. So they're catching up to us, and with their development cycles, like for us, it takes almost 20, 25 years to field a new airplane. China's fielding new stealth planes now in prototype, and I think they just went with one of their, like the J-20, not sure if I got the number right. It's actually in production and starting to go to field units where a couple years ago they didn't have anything. So if they keep that development cycle going, they will at minimum catch up to us very quickly. I don't think they're spending as much money on research and development as the United States or the West does, because why? They can just steal it from us, and they do it all the time. And it's a national security threat, and we need to start dealing with this. And I also think it's pretty ludicrous to be borrowing money from China to invest in our Pacific pivot, where we're going to deploy a bunch of more military forces in the Pacific to defend, quote, allies that don't really like us that much anyway from China. I don't think that's a real good plan. All right, story 15 comes from noinvite.com. This is a Bulgarian news source out of Sofia. And Interpol removes Turkey from database. Basically, the Turks, after the failed coup attempt, have just been going after Kermalist and supporters of the secular state and purging everything. And part of that purge was Ankara, the capital of Turkey, uploaded 60,000 people that they claim are related to this group here, and which is related to the cleric that's in the U.S., I believe. And they're basically saying these guys are seditious. You need to go after these 60,000 people. So Interpol just purged them from the database and said you're out. And to me, it's just tragic. At the beginning of the year, I said one of the biggest strategic blunders and strategic threats that faces the world is the loss of Turkey. I believe Turkey's going the right way of Iran. I saw an article just today about how 100,000 government employees have been purged. I still see, even to this day, every couple days, some article about various arrests still going on in Turkey. It's affected tens of thousands of teachers, government officials. They've all been put out to pasture by the Erdogan government, and I just weep for Turkey the way they're going. It's bad, and it's bad for the world because they're a big NATO partner. They have a very strong military, and if they flip allegiances, there's just going to be a problem. All right, this one comes from Infowars via TechDirt. China's surveillance plans, I guess this is number 16. China's surveillance plans include 600 million CCTV cameras nationwide and pervasive facial recognition. Not to be outdone by the covert license plate readers and facial recognition programs that are happening in the good old USA, China announces its own program to have, what's this, one per every two, a camera for every two-ish people in China. That's just crazy. So the whole world's going this way. And if, a lot of good arguments could be made, hey, we can track down criminals, blah, 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 blah. But what if the governments of the world go totalitarian and there's a camera with facial recognition? And another thing they don't talk about is each person kind of has a unique infrared signature, I believe. So it's not just the faces they're going to be looking at. And all this stuff gets scanned and boop, we got a, blip on person wanted for X, go arrest them. It's going to be very difficult to hide when all this comes together globally. And I think you should be worried about it. I know I don't like it. All right, article number 17 comes from the Daily Caller, talking about 70% of college grads will never pay off their student loans. It's like a lot of American systems. The college educational system is just broken. a lot of these students are probably going after degrees that probably they shouldn't be because financially they don't work. Typically you go in and you get your BA, you come out, there's no job, so you get a student loan, get your MA, and then you still not very good jobs, so you go back and get a PhD or try to get a PhD, get close. And because you've put all this effort into college, I'm not picking on that poor girl there, she's just clip art. A lot of people have this expectation that they should be entitled to big bucks and they should be entitled to work for the federal government because they've got this PhD in environmental studies or whatever. And because of the way the loan structure is, everything's just totally inflated. Colleges, their tuition's going up like, what is it? I don't know what the rate is, but it's like 8 times more than inflation, something like that. And it's because student loans. You can get student loans easy. The colleges keep sucking in more and more of that cash that's backed by the federal government. You can't shake a student loan. There actually is ways that you can, which I won't discuss, which is very unethical and duplicitous. But if you're honest, you could rack up so much debt that college is no longer worth it. And what happens when college is no longer worth it? What does that mean for our society? Supposedly all these people are graduating from college to go into professions that are in demand that need college educated workers. But maybe that's kind of a myth, or maybe we'll just get those workers from other places around the globe where, I think I was looking at some master's program in another country. It was like $2,000 a year equivalent, and that's paying for out of country tuition. I think most colleges now, that won't even pay for a quarter or a semester of school. It's just out of control. My solution to this would be no government funding for non-STEM majors, no government-backed loans for them. If you're not a science, technology, engineering major, sorry. Or maybe even not so much limiting it to STEM, but basically charting a path to, is your degree going to result in a very reasonable chance that you're going to be in a career that you can live well and pay that loan off? And if not, the government has no business backing student loans. Sorry, people. My whole thing is get the government out of this, have private loans that can have private industry fund college loans. For one thing, what it'll do is they'll automatically start looking at whether loans can be paid back or not. And they'll look at it as an investment with an expectation of a return. So that'll make it so, there's going to be a lot less money floating around to people who will never be able to pay their loans back. And which in turn, I believe, will shrink back down college tuition fees more reasonably because, some money is better than no money. And also what it will do is if something bad in life does happen, you can just declare bankruptcy and get out of your loan. Where right now you're essentially, unless you do a couple dirty tricks, a debt slave forever with these student loans. Where now, even though your chances of getting the student loans would probably be a lot less, your overall debt load would be lower, and if something did came up, you could shake them like any other conventional loan. That's the way I would handle it anyway. All right, number 18 comes again from In Serbia News. Chinese purchase billions of dollars worth of real estate in Australia annually. They also purchase a lot of real estate in the American West Coast. And, trade has winners and losers. A little thunder out there. So, just of interest geopolitically, I thought I'm seeing all sorts of articles about what Chinese are doing in Africa. And here's other areas of the world where their power is expanding. China's on the rise, and it's time to think about what that means. All right, story number 19 comes from CNET. Actually, it comes from govslaves.info. But I went to the full length rather than a recap. TV networks hide bad ratings with typos, report says. TV networks will intentionally misspell the names of shows when submitting episodes with poor viewership to Nielsen, reports the Wall Street Journal. So in case you just needed another reason to dislike cable TV, MSNBC, CNN, all these guys, here's another one for you. or basically they're manipulating the ratings. Uh, I'll pick on CNN a little bit. I mean, they don't need any help being picked on, but I'll pile on. Most of their money comes from agreements they have with cable networks to carry their TV station. Most of their money does not come from advertising. So essentially, if you have a cable provider that carries CNN, the other channels are subsidizing CNN. It's not cost effective. They can't survive on ad revenues alone, and because of their reputation, they demand a big chunk of cash for a cable provider to carry their network. And the cable providers make that money up from other places, so essentially they're subsidizing CNN. CNN, I often wonder if, and again, this is MSNBC, but similar concepts apply. I'm wondering if, a lot of their viewership is just people trapped in airports because for some reason airports are still stuck on using CNN for their default news network globally in many airports. So hopefully that'll change. But interesting. All right, our 20th article and final article that we'll cover here also comes from Blacklisted News. I think it's really from Gizmodo here. America's first free-roaming genetically engineered insects are coming to New York. Let's modify insects, let them roam free. I mean, I think they're already doing it actually with mosquitoes as well. And expect nothing wrong to happen, right? It'll all be good. Yeah, the Zika fighting mosquitoes, similar concept. So we're starting to see more and more genetically engineered organisms just being let loose. And of course, we're to assume there'll never be any problems. Things will work out great. I don't like it. And it's a sign of the times of increased genetic engineering. You have the transhumanists wanting to do that, both merging humans with computers and also changing our DNA. I, as a Christian, think that changing our DNA is a very bad idea. I'm not saying fixing genetic defects is necessarily a bad thing, although I'm not fully on board with that either, but that's a whole different discussion. But actually adding genes that aren't native to the human species. I, as a Christian, believe that Jesus is a kinsman redeemer. He died to redeem humanity. For any human being who wants to come to him and get saved, they can by putting their faith in Jesus, that he died for their sins and following him. But be careful, because your DNA might change so much that you no longer qualify as human, and that kinsman redeemership may not apply. And I'll get into that eventually, but just be careful. This is more of what's going on with genetics, and I think we need to be very careful here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my week's wrap up. Once again, it was for the week of July 2nd through July 8th, 2017. Other points of interest is Putin met with Trump. I guess it was a good meeting, and part of the initial fruit of that meeting was it seems like there was a peace fire in Syria that's somewhat holding. A lot of other stories, but I'm limiting it to 20 stories. So again, the list will be below. Let me know what you think. You can reach me on Twitter at Infocide, spelled INFOCYDE. Actually, let me throw up a little page. Here you go with my neat fade in, fade out, awesome special effects. You can reach me at Twitter at Infocide, on YouTube. My channel's Infocide 2010. I have a website that needs a lot of work still at radioinfocide.com, and you can reach me at radioinfocide@gmail.com, although I don't really check this email that often. So your best bet is probably here, leaving a comment on YouTube, at least for now. Thanks again for watching. Take care.